going on? Welcome to module number 4. And today we're going to talk about value versus cost. And I'm going to go into a deep dive. We're going to look at some things. We're going to look at some scenarios. We're going to play a little game. But before we do that, like always, I'm going to start with the stories to kind of give you the concept. So I remember what was it, about 6 months ago, we went to Northern California to Napa for a wedding, and some of our good friends were getting married. And we went up there and we drove. I think it was like a 10-hour drive or something to get up there, right? So we're 10 hours away from home, and we get up there and we're doing, hanging out. The wedding's like 2 days after we get there, so we're hanging out, partying, doing all that stuff. And then the day of the wedding, I pull out my suit, I pull out all my clothes that I'm gonna wear, and obviously I wanted to go to the wedding and have a good time and be there for my friends, but also, man, I wanted to make sure that they enjoyed it, and that it was a good experience for them. Um, but I'm pulling out all my stuff, and then I'm like, oh shit, I didn't have my shoes. I did not have my shoes. I left my shoes in Las Vegas, and so. Hold on, sorry about that. I left my shoes in Las Vegas, and so I was like, "Damn, what do I do?" So I get on Google. I didn't have a car because my cousin was in the wedding and he was out getting, with the groomsmen doing his thing. He was in the wedding, and so I'm like, "Oh shit!" So I pull up my phone. I look. I find that there's a Kohl's a couple miles away, and so I'm like, "All right, take a walk." So I walk all the way to Kohl's. And I wear size 14 shoes. So when I get there, I'm looking at all these different types of shoes and stuff, and they only have like a few. I think it was like one or two types of shoes in my size, and I was like, all right, I got the shoes. I don't even remember how much they cost, like 60 or 80 bucks, something like that. But I got these dress shoes, and I walked all the way back. And we ended up going to the wedding, and I had the shoes. They were good enough for me to boogie in, right? I was I was able to have a good time, and they had an amazing wedding. Um, but the reason I tell you that story is because in that moment of need, I would have paid anything for shoes. I would have paid anything for the shoes, right? And so uh, what that story tells you, and what it really showed me, is that value is all perceived, right? Value is all perceived. It's not something that, like, oh, what's the value of this little piece of plastic? It's 3 cents, right? Value is perceived, right? How about if this piece of plastic is what you need, is the link for your time machine? Then how much is it worth? You know what I mean? So that that's just how I want you to go into this lesson and thinking. And we're going to play a little game. So I'm going to hop into the presentation now. All right, so today we're talking value versus cost, and the first thing that I have for you is how much would you pay for this? We're going to play a little game. So the first one is this bottle of water, this exact bottle of water that you see on the screen. How much would you pay for that? You blurt your answer out, even though I can't hear you. It's all right. You're alone. You're going through this. You want to be fully engaged, right? So how much would you pay for that bottle of water? Okay, the next one. This is a painting. Looks like some red with some blue and some green. Like a 3-year-old probably could have painted this, right? How much would you pay for this painting? And then the last one, this is the iPhone X. How much would you pay for the iPhone X? Okay. So now that you have your numbers of how much you would pay, now I'm going to give you scenarios. And in the scenario, I want you to answer how much would you pay for each of these, okay? So number one, with the bottle of water, say you are in the Sahara Desert, and you've been traveling for 4 days, and you're alone. You There's no one around. You don't even know which direction you're going, and you're trying to read the stars and the sun, and walk north or whatever, and you're walking, and all of a sudden you come up on this bottle of water, and it's sitting there, but there's armed guards all around it, right? And these guards are standing there with big old machine guns and everything like that, but you haven't had water in 3 days, 4 days, and you're literally about to die from freaking lack of dehydration, or I mean from dehydration, right? And so you have $25,000 in your pocket, and these guards are all standing around the water. How much would you pay for the water then? How much would you pay for the water when it means the difference between life and death? Would you give 50% of that 25,000 for that bottle of water? Would you give 100%? Would you give 90%? Well, would you only give 3%, right? What would it be? How much would you pay for that bottle of water to save your life, right? So you see, that's the first example. The next one, this little painting, right? Now, if I told you that this painting was drawn by a 3-year-old girl in her art class, and her mom has it sitting in the kitchen, right? Yeah, it sits in the kitchen next to the refrigerator on the wall or something, right? So how much would you pay for that painting? Yeah, maybe $20, $30. If you knew the little girl, if she was, your cousin or something, you might pay a little bit more, $100, right? Now, how about if I told you that this painting was painted, and it was the first ever abstract painting in the world? And abstract painting nowadays is like everywhere. That's what most art is. But this was the first ever abstract painting ever created, and the person that painted this actually revolutionized the art industry and turned it into what it is now versus what it used to be with realistic paintings up until throughout all of humanity. So now, how much would you pay for this painting? So check this out. This painting is exactly what I just said. It was the first abstract painting, and this is this painting sold for the second most amount of money any painting has ever sold for in history, $183 million, somewhere around there, between 170 to 185 million, somewhere in that range. So yeah, that little ugly ass painting, to me, I don't see it. Like I said, I think a 3-year-old could have done that. $183 million, right? And then the iPhone, okay? iPhone, how much would you pay? They're $1,000, right? $1,000 at AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, Metro, PCS. It doesn't matter, right? They're all $1,000. But how about if this iPhone couldn't read SIM cards and the Wi-Fi didn't work on it? So now you have a phone, you have this amazing iPhone, but it can't connect to what makes it amazing, which is the internet. So you literally have this awesome piece of hardware, but all you can do is take pictures. You can't download apps. You can't call anybody. You can't text anybody. You can't Snap. You can't Instagram. You can't do anything. All you can do is take pictures, and that's pretty much it, because everything else requires the internet. How much would you pay for that phone? Nothing. A penny. So that's just an example of value versus cost, right? And so the next thing we're going to get into is, what is value, right? And I like going into the definitions, because when we have the definition, then we can build off of it, and we can use the definition to lead us into the next thing, right? So value, the definition, the monetary worth of something, right? Or a fair return or equivalent in goods, services, or money for something exchanged. So value is basically the worth of something, right? Well, what's it worth? Now let's look at perceive, because I believe, and not only do I believe, I know from years of studying and from being a consumer myself, perceived value is what matters. And so perceived is to attain awareness or understanding of, to regard as being such. Okay, so to regard as being such, or to attain awareness or understanding of. So when I told you this story of that painting, right? The painting, there was no context prior to it, right? There was no context. So you just saw this painting. You just saw it, just saw it for what it was. And then I tell you the story of this was the very first abstract painting ever created, and it revolutionized the art industry, and it was sold for $183 million. So what did I just do? I gave you awareness and understanding. I gave you awareness and understanding of what it was, right? And then what that did is it made you regard it as being what I told you, right? So now you see that painting in a whole different light, even though you might still think it's ugly as shit. Now you see like, yeah, man. Well, if I had that painting in my room, I'd be selling that bad boy for 150 million. Like I'll give you 25 million off, right? Um, but can you see how this perceived value is powerful, right? And so when you start thinking about your offer and you start thinking about your customers, your job is going to be how to make the perceived value much, much more than what they're going to pay for it, right? And remember, they need to get awareness and understanding of the value so that they can regard it as being that valuable, right? This isn't crazy. It's like X plus Y equals Z, right? Or whatever A plus B equals C, whatever formula you want to use. What we're doing is like, okay, what's the perceived value? What's the offer, and then what's the cost going to be, right? And so we want to play with that. So cost is different than value. Cost is always going to be different than value because cost is what is the exchange, right? How much is this going to cost me? Well, what is it going to cost me time? Is it going to cost me money? Is it going to cost me energy? Is it going to cost me effort? Value, perceived value is different, right? You can have a very high perceived value with a very low cost, or you can have a very high cost with a very low perceived value, depending on who you're talking to and depending on the context, right? One person would pay $30,000 to go see Jay-Z in concert. But if I was talking to someone that listens to country music, we wouldn't pay $1 to go see Jay-Z in concert, right? So it's all perceived value, right? So now we're going to take a look at how much value your product or service are worth. So there are two factors that you're going to be looking at. So people only do things for one of two reasons. Number one is to seek pleasure, to move towards, right? That's the carrot. And number two is to avoid pain, right? To avoid anything that's going to be painful or perceived as painful, which is the stick, right? The carrot and the stick. And so every one of your products or services or whatever it is that you offer has these factors, okay? So for my services, when I do marketing for a customer, what is the carrot? They're going to get new customers. They're going to their online presence is going to look amazing. They're going to get reporting, and they're going to be able to know that their numbers are growing, right? But then, what are the pain points? They're going to save a whole lot of time, right? They're going to be able to have more time with their family. They're not going to the pain of being away from their family is going to come down because they're making more money, which means they get to spend less time at work, right? So you got to start seeing how this cycle works, right? So what I want you to do as we get into the homework is I want you to determine how much value your product or service is worth. And I'm not talking like, don't sit there and be literally, oh, this gift card has 25 bucks on it. It's 25 bucks. No, like, what is your product or service? How much is it worth? What's the perceived value? How can you use a story to give people the awareness and understanding of the value, right? And then after you've determined that, then I want you to determine why you can say it with 100% certainty that it is worth that much value to them. And so I'm going to give you an example of this because I think some people will be looking at this and saying, well, I'm a real estate agent, or I sell marketing services, or I'm a plumber, or whatever it is. How can I show there's more perceived value? So what are people buying when they buy you as a real estate agent or buying, whatever? They're not buying the home, right? They can buy a home from anybody. What are they buying? You. They're buying you, right? So when we start talking about your offer, what are the rewards that they get for working with you versus everyone else in the market? And then what are the pain points that they avoid by working with you instead of everyone else in the market? So maybe most real estate agents charge whatever 3% thing, and then they hit you with all these other fees, right? Or most real estate agents will only do something up to a certain point, and they don't follow through, and they don't finish this or whatever it is, right? What is the advantage of working with you, right? So I want you to determine why you can say with 100% certainty that your offer is worth that much value, okay? And then I want you to write down what will they get, and I want you to write down what will they avoid. Now remember, this isn't what they get in the offer. We're not to that point yet, but just your main product or your main service. What will people get as a result? What's the pleasure that they get if they move forward and they have success? And then what is the pain that they're avoiding if they go through with it? And so with that, hope you enjoyed today's module. This lesson is key as we move forward because at the end we're going to create your offer, and we need to understand this stuff as we move through it. And I hope you enjoyed it. I'll talk to you on the next one. Peace.